My husband, Darius, didn't come home until 11:47 on the night of our 8th anniversary. I had made brisket, low and slow, the way his mother always said she made it growing up in Beaumont, which was a lie, because Claudette had never made brisket a day in her life. I had learned from a YouTube video, practiced it twice, got it right. I set the dining room table with the good linen placemats, lit 2 candles, poured myself a glass of Malbec and waited. By 9 o'clock the candles had burned halfway down and I had refilled my glass twice. By 10 o'clock the brisket was cold and I had stopped checking my phone. Not because I had given up, but because I had already decided, somewhere in the quiet of that dining room, that I wasn't going to give him the version of me that screamed. He walked in through the garage door like he owned the atmosphere around him. He smelled like bourbon and something floral. Jasmine, I thought, or maybe gardenia, and he wasn't even trying to hide it. He didn't fumble with his keys or lower his voice or manufacture an excuse. He saw me at the dining room table, still in the dress I had worn for him, one candle still flickering, and he crossed his arms. He said he had been with Ingrid Colby, the commercial developer whose HVAC contracts he had been managing for nearly 2 years. He said they had been celebrating a major project approval, a $40 million mixed-use development in Midtown Houston. He said she understood his ambition in a way I never could, that I was content to sit in a cubicle and flag paperwork while he was out building something real. He said the arrangement, that was the word he chose, arrangement, had been going on for 4 months, and that tonight he had finally realized he didn't have a single regret about any of it. He stood there waiting for me to throw something. I picked up my fork and ate the last piece of cold brisket on my plate. Then I dabbed the corners of my mouth with the linen napkin, carried my dishes to the sink, and washed them by hand in the dark, while he stood in the kitchen demanding to know if I had heard a single word he just said. I heard every word. I had been hearing words like them for a long time. I went to the guest room, locked the door, and opened my laptop. I am a senior fraud examiner at one of the largest regional insurance carriers in Texas. I have worked in the Special Investigations Unit for 11 years. My job is to find the things people don't want found: staged car accidents, fake disability claims, inflated medical billing, and most relevant to that particular evening, fraudulent workers' compensation schemes. I spend my days following money that shouldn't exist, tracing claims that don't add up, and building cases that hold up in criminal court. I had been building this one for 6 weeks. It started with our joint tax return, one line item, a K-1 from an LLC I had never heard of called D&I Contracting Solutions LLC. The K-1 showed a loss which should have reduced our taxable income, which should have seemed like a good thing, but the name bothered me. D&I Darius and Ingrid, as it turned out. I had just needed the 6 weeks to prove it. By 11 that night, I had everything I needed. D&I Contracting Solutions had been incorporated in Delaware 18 months earlier, using a registered agent service so the owner names weren't immediately searchable. But I had access to LexisNexis through my employer, and a filing Darius had made to the state's Contractor Licensing Board listed the LLC as a secondary business entity. From there, I traced the co-owner, Ingrid Colby, through her property management subsidiary. What D&I had been doing was this: filing workers' compensation claims for employees who did not exist, phantom workers, names generated from old Social Security numbers, addresses that were vacant lots or UPS store boxes, who had supposedly suffered on-the-job injuries at 3 separate construction sites. All of them Ingrid's properties, all contracted to Darius's HVAC company. The claims had moved through our standard adjudication process without a single flag because the amounts were moderate, spread across 2 policy years, and the documentation was clean. Darius had filed fraudulent claims against my employer, against the company that paid my salary and funded every vacation he had taken, every dinner he had expensed, every suit he had bought himself, while calling what I did a waste of a sharp mind. The total, $347,000. I did not sleep that night. I built the case file with the same precision I would apply to any matter that crossed my desk, except this one I knew better than any I had ever worked. I compiled the LLC incorporation records, the cross-referenced employee names against the Social Security Death Master file, the adjudication records from our internal claim system, the money trail from the D&I operating account to a secondary account linked to Ingrid's property management subsidiary. I documented everything every thread, every routing number, every timestamp. When the sky outside the guest room window began to turn from black to gray, I got up. I could hear Darius snoring at the end of the hall. I went to the master closet and removed every suit, every dress shirt, every pair of sneakers I had paid for over 8 years of marriage. I packed them into contractor bags, the heavy black kind we used for job sites, and loaded them into my SUV. I had already located a Salvation Army drop-off that opened at 8. Then I came back inside and prepared the envelope. Inside it I placed 3 things. First, the divorce petition I had drafted 3 weeks earlier and been holding until I was certain. Second, a printout of the D&I Contracting Solutions LLC filings, with Ingrid Colby's name highlighted in yellow. Third, a summary of the 12 fraudulent workers' compensation claims pulled from our internal claims portal, with a handwritten note paper clipped to the front. These were paid by my employer. The investigation begins Monday. I made a cup of coffee, put it in my travel mug, and walked out the front door. I was backing out of the driveway when the bedroom light flipped on upstairs. A minute later, the front door opened, and Darius came out onto the porch in his undershirt and boxers, holding the envelope, his face drained of its usual certainty. He ran down the front walk, calling my name. He slapped the hood of my SUV with an open palm. He had realized, I imagine, that I had quietly removed him from our shared auto insurance policy the previous afternoon, which made the commercial plates on his work truck legally non-operational and every job he had scheduled that week uninsurable. I checked my mirrors, took a long sip of coffee, and pulled out of the neighborhood. The drive into downtown Houston was 22 minutes. I listened to the radio. Something about rainfall totals and something about the Astros losing by 2 in the 8th. The city skyline came up through the morning haze, looking exactly the way it always did, solid and indifferent and entirely unconcerned with my marriage. I parked in my assigned spot, took the elevator to the 14th floor, and sat down at my desk. His first voicemail came in at 78. He was furious, but working to sound measured. He said I had made a serious mistake. He said Ingrid had resources, lawyers, connections, people in this city who would hear about what I was trying to do, and that I had no idea what kind of world I was stepping into by dragging her name into my little paperwork tantrum. He told me to call him back. I deleted it and opened my email. His second voicemail arrived at 7:34. The control was gone. His credit card had been declined at a gas station. He had tried to access our joint checking account and found it locked. I had moved my direct deposit to my individual account the previous afternoon and revoked his signature authority, which the bank confirmed I could do unilaterally since the account had been opened in my name first. He demanded I fix it immediately. He said he had a job site to get to by 9 o'clock. He said if I didn't call him back, he was sending Terrell down to my building. I deleted that one too. The third voicemail came at 8:19, and it was a different animal. His breathing was uneven. He stammered over the first few words. He said an automated compliance notice had been sent from a regional insurance carrier. My company, though he did not yet fully understand that, to the D&I Contracting Solutions registered address, flagging a pattern review on multiple claims filed under that entity. He said he needed me to make it stop. His voice cracked on the last 3 words. He said he could explain everything, that Ingrid had been the one who structured it all, that he had just processed paperwork, that he hadn't truly understood what he was putting his name on. I put my headphones in, opened the claims file, and spent the next 3 hours turning the case summary into something that would hold up in a courtroom. My desk phone rang just before noon. It was Solomon Watkins, my supervisor and the director of the Special Investigations Unit. Solomon had spent 20 years in insurance fraud prosecution before joining our company. He was methodical, precise, and completely impossible to rattle. He asked me to come up. I already knew what had happened. Ingrid Colby was a significant commercial policyholder. Her 3 properties were insured under a premium business account worth over $800,000 in annual premiums. She had called our VP of Commercial Accounts that morning and demanded my termination. She had described me as a scorned wife misusing her professional access to run a personal vendetta against a business associate. She had threatened to pull her entire account, file a complaint with the Texas Department of Insurance, and go public about what she called a severe breach of data privacy. She thought she was dealing with a liability problem she could simply remove. I straightened my blazer, picked up my notepad, and took the elevator to the 16th floor. Solomon's office faced east toward the ship channel. He was standing when I came in, arms crossed, not angry, calculating, the way he looked when something genuinely interesting had found its way onto his desk. He gestured to the chair across from him and we sat. He laid out Ingrid's call with complete neutrality, all of it, her accusations, her threats, her ultimatum. Then he leaned back and waited. I told him about Darius first. 8 years, the HVAC business, the anniversary dinner I ate alone. I closed that portion in about 90 seconds because Solomon was not a man who needed the emotional background, and I had not come up here to ask for his sympathy. Then I walked him through the file. I laid out every element, the D&I LLC structure, the co-ownership with Ingrid's property management subsidiary, the 12 phantom employees, 3 of them traced to names in the Social Security Death Master file, one currently serving a sentence at a federal correctional institution in Beaumont, the adjudication records, the routing of the paid funds to the D&I account, the transfer trail from there into the Nevada shell entity held jointly between Ingrid's subsidiary and a trust registered under an address that turned out to be a UPS store in Scottsdale, Arizona. $347,000, paid out by our company, over 18 months. When I finished, Solomon was quiet for a long time. He looked out toward the ship channel. Then he looked back at me and said that Ingrid Colby had just made the most catastrophically poor decision of her professional life. He explained the protocol in the same tone he used to explain everything. When a major commercial account holder contacts the director of a special investigations unit and demands the removal of a specific examiner, with no formal complaint, no documented basis, no regulatory filing, it does not produce the result they're looking for. It triggers an escalation review. It signals concealment. And when the examiner they're trying to remove has just placed a documented multi-claim fraud scheme originating from that policyholder's own project sites directly onto his desk, the path forward is not complicated. He opened the bottom drawer and set a red folder on the desk between us. He told me I was now the lead investigator on a full SIU sweep of every workers' compensation and general liability claim ever filed in connection with Ingrid Colby's 3 properties, with full authorization to coordinate directly with the Texas Department of Insurance Fraud Unit. Ingrid's policies were being flagged for a regulatory hold effective immediately. All further communication from her or her legal team would be routed to our general counsel. He slid the folder across to me. I picked it up and felt its weight in my hands. It only took 4 days. Ingrid had already scheduled a groundbreaking ceremony for the Midtown development, the same project she and Darius had been celebrating on the night of my anniversary. High-visibility event, city council members, private investors, commercial press. She had planned to announce Darius as the general contractor for the new build, positioning it as the natural next chapter of their professional partnership. I arrived an hour before the ceremony with 2 investigators from the Texas Department of Insurance Fraud Unit and our company's general counsel. We came through the venue's event coordinator entrance, identified ourselves to the property manager, and were shown to the staging area adjacent to the main room. I watched from the side as the guests assembled. Darius was there, wearing a new suit he must have managed to buy on a card I hadn't known about. Standing near the back with his arms crossed, working very hard to look the way he used to look when he believed he was the most important person in any room. He had brought Claudette. My mother-in-law, Claudette, was seated in the reserved front section in a cream-colored dress, and the diamond bracelet Darius had given her for her birthday 14 months ago. I remembered seeing the charge on our joint card and asking about it. He had said it was a client gift, expense to the business. I had let it go. That was the last thing I was letting go. Ingrid stepped to the podium in a sharp burgundy blazer, her posture immaculate, her smile polished to the kind of shine that only comes from years of standing in front of people you intend to take money from. She spoke about vision and community investment and partnerships built on integrity. She was composed and convincing, and I will give her that much. She was mid-sentence when I approached the floor microphone near the media table. I introduced myself by my full name and my title. I told the room that I was the lead investigator on an active fraud review being conducted jointly by my employer and the Texas Department of Insurance Fraud Unit. I told them that the review had identified $347,000 in fraudulent workers' compensation claims filed against policies connected to properties managed and developed by the woman currently standing at that podium. I told them that those funds had been systematically routed through a jointly owned limited liability company to accounts belonging to two individuals, one of whom was scheduled to be announced today as the general contractor for this very project. The room went silent in a way that had physical weight to it. I told the investors that all three of Ingrid's existing properties were under a regulatory hold as of that morning. I told them that the Texas Department of Insurance Fraud Unit had filed for an emergency asset freeze on the D&I Contracting Solutions accounts pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. I told them I was not there to advise them on their investment decisions, only to ensure they had accurate information before any new commitments were made at this table. Then I stepped back. Ingrid grabbed the podium microphone. She pointed at Darius and declared, loudly and with remarkable speed, that she had been entirely deceived, that the LLC had been his concept, his structure, that she had only signed documents he had placed in front of her without full explanation, that she was the victim of a subordinate contractor who had abused her professional trust to run a scheme she had known nothing about. She was fast and she was precise, and in a different room she might have made it work. Darius stared at her from across the floor with an expression I had never seen on his face in 8 years, the specific look of a man watching the last door close. Then, without any apparent calculation, he started talking. He told the room exactly when Ingrid had called him into her private office to walk him through the plan. He gave the date. He named the restaurant where they had dinner to celebrate the first successful payout. He quoted the number she had said they would each receive once the total reached its target. He was specific and detailed, and so clearly telling the truth that the people who wanted to believe otherwise couldn't quite manage it. The state investigators moved before either of them could say another word. Claudette stood up from her seat in the front row. She had been watching her son come apart in real time, and her face had done something I don't have an exact word for. Fallen inward, the way a structure does when the weight-bearing wall suddenly gives. She pushed past the guests around her and was halfway toward the stage when security stepped in front of her. She called out his name. He didn't look at her. I didn't go to her either. There was nothing left for me to say in that direction. I walked out through the event entrance, got in my car, and drove back to my office. The calls from Darius came in waves on the way. 4 voicemails in under 20 minutes, the background noise shifting from the ballroom to what sounded like a parking garage to somewhere with an echo I couldn't place. I listened to all 4 in my parking space with the engine off. Then I deleted them and took the elevator upstairs. The following weeks moved the way my professional life always moved, with documents and timelines and calls from the state attorney general's office. Darius was charged with 12 counts of insurance fraud and 1 count of criminal conspiracy. Ingrid was charged with the same counts, plus 2 counts of money laundering related to the Nevada shell structure. Their respective attorneys immediately moved to sever the cases, each positioning the other as the primary actor. It didn't change much. The evidence was the evidence, and the evidence was mine. Claudette called me 9 times in the week after the groundbreaking. The early voicemails were indignant. I was calculating. I had always been difficult to warm to. I had engineered the destruction of her family out of spite. By the 5th message, she was crying. By the 9th, she was asking whether there was anything I could do to help Darius before the arraignment. I listened to each one after it came in, then blocked her number after the last. She and her son Terrell were renting a room in a cousin's house on the north side of the city. The house Darius had been covering for them out of the D&I operating account, a lease arrangement that had been set up quietly 2 years earlier. Another thread I had found in the 6 weeks before the anniversary was attached to an entity now frozen by the state. The landlord terminated the arrangement within the month. Claudette went from hosting Saturday prayer circles in a dining room she considered hers to sharing a bathroom with 3 other adults in a house off I-45. My sister-in-law, Shonda, filed for divorce from Terrell inside of a week. She had married into the family for the stability it appeared to offer, and once she understood that the stability had been built on fraudulent insurance claims and was now entirely dismantled, She retained an attorney within 48 hours, using a credit card she had apparently kept separate for exactly this kind of contingency. She moved back to her parents' house in Katy and did not return Claudette's calls. I signed my own divorce decree on a Tuesday morning in March, in a conference room with my attorney and a notary and a view of a parking lot. Darius had no remaining assets to contest, no licenses still valid, and no legal standing to complicate the proceedings. I read every page. I signed my name 12 times. My hand was entirely steady. Solomon presented the promotion paperwork that same afternoon. The SIU had recommended my elevation to Director of Special Investigations based on the outcome of the Colby-Wallace review. The investigation had recovered the full $347,000 through the asset freeze, identified 3 additional fraudulent billing schemes across Ingrid's property portfolio during the broader audit, and produced a prosecution file the state's case was built almost entirely upon, a file I had started building in a guest bedroom between midnight and 5 in the morning on the night of my 8th wedding anniversary. The promotion came with a corner office on the 16th floor and a view that faced east, toward the ship channel, where the cranes moved on clear days against a sky that looked like it had nothing to prove. I bought a townhouse in Montrose 3 months later, narrow and full of natural light, with a kitchen that has more counter space than I have learned to fill. There is a small back patio where I drink my coffee on weekend mornings, and a refrigerator that makes a low hum I have decided to find charming rather than alarming. My name is the only name on the deed, the only one on the utilities, the only one on the mailbox out front. On a Saturday evening in October, I made brisket again. Low and slow, the way I had learned, the way I had practiced until I got it exactly right. The whole house smelled like it for most of the afternoon. I set one place at the small wooden table by the front window, poured myself a glass of Malbec, and sat down while the plate was still warm. The first bite was perfect. I did not check my phone. There was nothing on it that needed my attention. Outside the window, the neighborhood was doing what it does on Saturday evenings. Someone walking a dog, a car pulling into a driveway, the easy, ordinary motion of people living inside their own quiet lives. I ate slowly, and the food stayed warm the whole time, and when I was finished, I sat for a while longer with my wine and watched the last light go soft through the glass, and I felt something I hadn't felt in longer than I could precisely name. Just still, just mine, just exactly enough.